Here we are all visiting.
I wasn't looking at the clock.
The May 15th, 2023 special Wasilla City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, council, please put away your cell phones. If you've got personal business to attend to during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to all attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located directly in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Madam Deputy Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Here?
Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Vlock.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio.
Here.
Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum with all council members present in council chambers except for council members Brown and Johnson. They are absent and excused unless there's objection from the body.
Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Nikki, would you lead us?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item of business is approval of the agenda. And we need to make some changes. It says sewer fund and water fund when actually it's water fund and airport. Okay? So those are the only changes.
May I, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification. So what she's referring to are the page numbers on this document, not on the agenda. Makes sense. My mistake.
Are they different page numbers?
The water, they're the right page numbers. However, it should be water fund and airport fund.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right. Is there an objection to the agenda as changed?
As presented.
Hearing none, the agenda stands. We are on to public participation. It's a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Okay, and our first one is Robin Lockwood.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Robin Lockwood and I'm Wasilla High School Student Government and Leadership Co-Advisor alongside Carly Rockenstein. Unfortunately, we were unable to attend the May 8th City Council meeting, but took time to listen with our leadership students later in the week. We were alarmed to hear Council Member Graham's recount the Warrior Way timeline, as it doesn't align with our email correspondence, which you should have attached here shortly. To refresh your memory, he stated, a government teacher reached out to him, Graham offered help, and no one reached back out. Then Mr. Marvel presented to the City Council, and Graham and Senator Wilson offered to help us, and no one reached out from Wasilla High School. When in reality, in November of 2021, Jason Marvel presented the Warrior Way proposal to City Council. Then in January of 2022, he presented the Warrior Way proposal to our leadership class. On January 27th, we sent an email to Stu Graham inviting him to speak to our class and answer questions that we had about the process. We received no response. Myself and Quinn Shackle attended the City Council meeting on February 14th of 2022, and he stated that he was working alongside us when in reality had never replied to our email. At this time, Mayor Ledford suggested the potential of reaching out to somebody else. After the meeting, we followed up with Member Graham in an email. 2 days later, he had his first response, saying he was going out of town and that he would contact us when he got back. There was no contact made. With no contact, we sent an email to Senator Wilson, and he responded. There was spring break, there was legislative session, there was a lot of rescheduling, and ultimately he canceled during the spring semester. Over the summer, he called me and stated that he probably wasn't the best person to deal with this issue because he had previously suggested that it was potentially a DOT matter and suggested we once again speak to the City Council Planning Department. At this point, the leadership and student government class backed off until we had further direction from Jason Marvel. In February 2023, Jason reached out to Alina Rubio and got the ball moving once again. We wanted to take a moment and address this inaccurate and untrue statements that Councilmember Graham made against the student government class at Wasilla High School. I hope that my testimony can set the record straight that we tried to work alongside Councilmember Graham and he provided no assistance, contrary to what he suggested. He was also the only council member to vote against the proposal after publicly stating that he wanted to work with us in numerous meetings. We're so thankful for Councilmember Rubio and Mayor Ledsford's continued support of Wasilla High School. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, public participation is closed. And Madam Deputy Clerk, read the next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one item of business this evening, the fiscal year 2024 budget discussion and departmental presentations. This will be done in committee of the whole related to ordinance serial number 2323, providing for the adoption of the annual budget for fiscal year 2024 and appropriating funds to carry out said budget. The budget presentations are on the agenda and order of money.
Okay, do I hear a motion to enter committee of the whole?
Madam Mayor, I move that we enter into the committee of the whole.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been made, the motion's been made by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, seconded by Councilmember Rubio to enter the committee of the whole. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are in the committee of the whole at 6:07 p.m. Okay, tonight we are doing water fund, and in your budget book, it is on page 164. And electronically, it is 180. I will go, as usual, the accounts.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
And as usual, can I ask for a summary?
Of course.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Eric Shaw with the Public Works Department again. So the water fund is broken into, we only have 5 people, but it's broken into sections for, I don't want to be in sewer. Sorry, just one sec. There we go. So it's broken into general administration, customer accounting services, treatment plants, which is kind of a misnomer, and then distribution. But when we jump to page 164, we'll be talking about all of those together. So the way our water distribution system works is we have several wells. We have one well that produces most of our water. I believe that's the Susitna well. It's 1,000 gallons per minute, which is really, really good. And then we have some other wells that are tied into that, and then we have the distribution system, and we have multiple water towers that aid us in storage and provide most of the pressure that you have at your faucets. And then we also have some systems that reduce pressure, especially south of Walmart. There's a pressure reducing valve down there. Our system is mostly city owned, but there is a section down at the ranch that was partially built and turned over to us by one of the private water distribution entities in the valley. We are pretty stable in our staffing. We have a lot of customer interface with our water system. So there are a lot of work orders that are related to water issues. It's also one of the most active departments for turning on and off services. So if you buy a house or sell a house, sometimes you'll have a water service turned off, but also there's a non-payment issue, and so we do a lot of notices where we post on homes that are within 48 hours of having their water turned off for non-payment. So there's a lot of movement in turning on and turning off, or at least posting those notices to try to get people back into compliance with their bills. This is a department that has a very close relationship with finance, so we have an in-house finance person who handles our billing and helps people over the phone with their online payments. We have an online portal, and so it's probably our most active customer utilities segment. Sewer's a lot less active because there aren't meters on your sewer. So we check out we sell meters as well to businesses and customers, especially with new construction.
Pauline.
Just a quick question, please. Just a question with regard to water rates. Are we doing any comparisons with other cities that are like-sized, like-minded, in the sense of what we charge for our water rates across the board?
Through the mayor. So one of the things on our to-do list is there are grant opportunities through the DEC to do rate studies. And so Deputy Administrator Nygaard and I have been talking about getting one of those grants so that we can look at our rates again. I don't have the full history on the last time we've raised rates. I understand it wasn't too long ago, but we want to get some outside help to review our rates and see how they compare, both to our operations but also regionally for cost.
That sounds great. And so at this point, you don't anticipate any increase in rates for where we are right now?
Correct. Not at this point. We don't have any legwork or groundwork to propose any changes at this point. With that, if we turn to 164, that's where the compilation of those different segments of the budget are all tallied together. And then I'll just make a note that the detailed section for this starts in the back on supplemental page 300 with a little bit of it right on 299, but most of it starts on 300.
Okay. We will start with account 10, which is personnel services. Account 20, personnel services benefit. Account 30, professional services.
Madam Mayor, if we could move it back up to account 1030 overtime. We're seeing a 25% increase in overtime. Can you maybe walk us through that?
Absolutely. Trying to decide which one it's in. It might be an admin. No, it looks like it's basically shared between treatment and distribution. If I'm reading it correctly. So the water staff have on-call hours where they respond to emergencies. They also are working on, they work with contractors when there are projects that are after hours. So for instance, there's going to be night work out on KGB. And so they'll be joining the contractors that are doing the connection work at night. And so they have been doing that in other projects. They'll continue to do that with KGB. So between emergency call-outs and off-time hour construction, like middle of the night stuff, it reflects in a higher than you might expect over time.
And, you know, utility relocation is part of the state's budget for these projects like KGB. Are we being reimbursed for that overtime associated with that project, or how's that working?
I don't believe so. I believe our portion of the KGB project, as an example, is our share of that contractor's expense. So if you were to think of the total cost of the KGB, it would be the contractor that's doing the work, and then inside our operations budget, that overtime as well.
So we don't coordinate with DOT when they're putting these budgets together to say, hey, you're gonna cost us an extra $6,000 by doing that. Not that we should stop the road or anything like that, but if the project cost isn't, from the state, isn't accurately reflecting the cost of the project, that's concerning.
I don't think DOT would pay us to work on our own system. So we're paying.
They pay MTA to work on their system, and they pay MEA to work on their system. Why would we be any different? We're a utility.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I don't know of DOT paying us to work on our system, but we could definitely see if that's something that we could be charging for.
Appreciate that for future projects. Thank you.
Okay, we are to account 40, purchased property. Account 45, construction services. Account 50, other purchased services.
Madam Mayor, if we could go back to 4030, repair and maintenance, if you could just walk us through that $40,000 increase.
So that is on page 307 in the back. And so we have, it's about a third of the way down. First line is called equipment, buildings, pumps, tanks, pipes, valves for $25,000. So that is funding for those itemized things. And then we have 800 for, I think it's just computer systems. If I do the line swapping, for the 800 I think is for computer systems. And then I believe the security cameras are 10,000 to have them at multiple facilities. And then we have controls and electrician. So maybe I misspoke. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so let me just back up for a sec. So 25,000 for equipment, buildings, pumps, tanks, pipes, and valves. 800 for computer systems and security cameras. 10,000 for controls, and then 2,500 for electrician support.
So computer systems is not covered under 9917 technology.
To Councilmember Graham through the mayor. So the technology replacement currently, as its definition stands, is just the hardware to replace it. So it could be, you might have miscellaneous small computer items that you purchase out of your own budget.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Colleen?
Thank you. Could you give us a quick synopsis with account 45? It looks like we've got deficits with probably projects that were completed. Is that why we have it like
Yeah.
this?
Yes, through the mayor. So 45 is where you'll see existing CIP projects. And so you'll see if a CIP project is falling off the list, such as 4527 Richmond Hills, you'll see that's a deficit because we're not putting more money into that account in this budget request. You might see in water repairs 4935 that we're asking for 125,000, but it's less than the 126,000 last year, so it shows a deficit of 38,000.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay.
So I also see here, another line that talks about security cameras. When we looked at the account earlier, we looked at one that said security cameras. What's the difference between those two lines?
Through the mayor.
I'm saying the difference in explanation of those two lines. What falls under that?
That's an excellent question. So the $40/30 $800 is related to existing systems and the program that manages the existing cameras. The request for security cameras within 4568 is the expansion to more facilities that don't have security coverage right now.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to account 50, other purchased services. Account 60, supplies. Account 80, capital purchases. Account 99, interfund transfers.
Madam Mayor, if we could talk about 5082 staff development.
So that increase relates to ongoing training for our licensed water operators. The original budget didn't cover the ongoing certifications that they required. So we, during the last bargaining unit negotiations, there was discussion about the training that's required to have that license. And so when we went through the budget, we looked at what the costs for getting the continuing educations and credits necessary. So that's a reflection of keeping that up to date.
Great, thank you. These licenses are required by the state or certifications required by the state?
That is correct.
Okay. Next, we are moving on.
So, Madam Mayor, kind of an overview here, looking at page 147, beginning net position of 7.5 million, and ending net position of under 7 million. Our reserves are 20 to 50%. Could you tell me what that bracket is, the 20 to 50% bracket is?
So Councilmember Graham through the mayor. So the benchmark reserve for the water and sewer fund is 10%, which I believe when we looked at the overview, so the water fund with the projected revenues and expenditures will maintain that threshold. The sewer fund, because of its original net position, will, I believe it was around 4.9% of depreciable assets will be reserved at the end of 2024 because of the $8 million in capital requests.
So, last year were we over on the water fund over that 10%, or just because of the amount of depreciation that we had, we're able to have a lower?
Well, so we were at the benchmark, slightly over on all funds. Water fund tends to be a healthier fund. It has a bigger customer base. The sewer fund was above the 10%, but with this year's request for capital improvement projects, that's why we're seeing a decrease in that percentage of reserve.
And that decreases about 50% down to about 5% reserve. Is there a long-term plan to rebuild that, or?
So the reason there was no, general fund transfer proposed is because one of the open items is the 1 million or 1.1 million in match funds for the 5.7 million we received this year. We are hoping that, or have reason to believe that many of the locally funded projects that we have proposed may serve as that match. So that would mean that, we would preserve the $1.1 million in fund balance. So,
And then it brings us up another 3.5% or so. What is it, 8, almost 9?
Yeah, I'd have to.
So it'd be
I'd
pretty
have
close,
to
okay.
confirm that, but yeah, I think that the idea is that we've got this significant infusion of capital, and then over time we'll have to rebuild.
So you say over time, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years? Any?
Well, it will depend upon, I know we also have the 12.8 million we have been notified through Kelsey's office for, so it will kind of depend on what that match and how much of our locally funded or pre-award costs can be applied to that match.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to the airport fund. That's on page 175. And I don't know what it is electronically.
91.
91.
As an airport overview, we don't technically have one full FTE for the airport. So the summer and winter work that happens out there is split between a roads tech 2 and our road supervisor. So 0.6 of our road tech 2 and 0.25 of our road supervisor. And then we have 0.05 with admin assistance for the billing and the tie down, a little bit of the tie down management, but we also house a bunch of that control in the in my public works administration office too, dealing with leases and that such. So the admin side, the finance clerk is basically the billing each month for different rental agreements or tie downs. Yeah.
All right, account number 10, personnel services. Account number 20, personnel services benefit.
Can you remind me of the page number again, Madam Mayor?
175.
Okay, so if we could look at overtime, 1030. Again, overtime is more than double what it was the previous year. Could you talk to that?
I'm not sure exactly how the 8,200 was figured. I have to defer to the finance director.
John?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Councilmember Graham, through the mayor. So the current overtime usage for the airport is $7,000, and we still have a couple months yet to be reported. And so just based on trend is why there was an increase there. I do know there, even though the airport has a lot going on, we're not, quite into pressing the gas pedal, but there's a lot of pre-planning that's happening, and so didn't feel a need that trend was going to change.
What's the current need for all the overtime this year? Was it due to snow or?
Yeah, it's been mostly related to snow and other weather events. There's also been some mechanical issues with gates and stuff, so that's required some weekend time from the staff to go figure out what's going on.
Thank you.
Okay.
And did we increase the size of the airport commission or are we
It's been
increasing
meeting more
it?
often. Same size, not 5 people, but it's been meeting more than quarterly.
Thank you.
Okay, account 30, professional services. Account 40, purchased property.
If we could look at 4030 repair and maintenance, you said we had some additional repairs this year which were unexpected. So from what I'm seeing here, you're anticipating more unexpected repairs. Isn't it? I mean, you're up by 40% on that line.
Yeah, so if you turn to page 308 in the back, we have monies for gate repair and maintenance. That's something we just talked about. Lighting, breakers, and electrical maintenance. We have generator, non-routine repair. That's a term contract we just put out. Keep those backup generators working. And then we have, the bulk of it is additional monies for shop maintenance at the airport.
We're moving on to account 45, which is construction services.
Madam Mayor, if we could back up to the discussion we were just having. You mentioned that you had overtime to repair the gates. And then you're anticipating more overtime next year, and then under 4030 again, you have gate repair and maintenance, $8,500. Are we duplicating something here between the regular repairs? And are these repairs, baling wire repairs, just holding it together till the next problem comes in?
Yeah, so the typical process is something fails on the gate, tends to be after hours or on the weekends. Our staff responds and sees if they can fix it. They might realign rollers, they might see if a chain fell off. If they can't fix it, then they secure contractual services and they have a specialty gate repair crew come out and fix it. It is a repetitive process. The gates do need to be replaced, but they're quite expensive. We have asked for some capital monies to do that, and if we receive that funding, it'll include better controls. It'll include remote sensing so we can see from our phones or something what's going on. It's disruptive for our staff to pull away on a Saturday evening and figure out why the gate didn't close like it was supposed to. So the gates are not serving us very well, but we need them, and they are not cheap to replace, but that's our ultimate goal, is to have a more efficient, more reliable gate system in the future.
Do you know what we spent on under 4030 this year for gate repair maintenance? I mean, is that?
I'd have to ask if Joan is able to see that.
to Councilmember Graham through the mayor. So the way our system, it doesn't detail it out. I do see Door Systems of Alaska for 2,900. I don't know if they're the vendor. So some of it's broken out specifically by vendor, some of it isn't. So that might be something we have to provide back to you.
I'm just curious if we're spending more on repair and maintenance, fixing the gates better, changing the way that we respond and our ability to see the status of those gates. Wouldn't that reduce our overtime? And I'm not going to recommend any amendments based on this, but I'm just not seeing the connection there.
Through the mayor, if we were to replace it with a newer system, I think our overall costs would go down, but there'd be that upfront capital cost. So we're kind of in that catch-22 where we need to keep it running. We'd like to replace it if we could, but we'll keep making the repairs so that they operate like they need to until a long-term solution comes along.
Yeah, I would like to see what previous years looked like. I mean, 8,500 sounds like a lot more than we spent or than we budgeted in previous years. Thank you.
Okay, account 45, construction services.
The communication part of this, 50/30, what all falls under communications is that? Some sort of circuit that's out there to monitor 50/30?
Oh, I didn't know we were there yet.
No, we wasn't, it's still on construction services.
Oh, sorry. We'll get to that in a minute. As Eric would say, I'll hold my hat.
Is there any questions about account 45? Here none. Account 50, other purchased services.
Same question.
On page 309, that line is broken into postage, airport commission meetings for 800, courier package and letter delivery for 250, Matanuska Telephone Association for 3350. And then there's airport shop service for 2,900 and local service for 100, and then GCI long distance. I think that's probably the 100.
Right.
So most of that is service to the shop.
So there are security cameras out at the airport. Are those monitored somewhere? Because to me, looking at this, the cost of this line, it looks like it's a circuit, not access to the internet. And if the cameras aren't being live monitored and can be accessed by the internet, internet service would be a heck of a lot cheaper than a circuit out there, which, a circuit basically is dedicated bandwidth
Right.
versus access to the internet, which we also don't really have a problem with out here. You just have to hit the button to get to it as opposed to look immediately for it. Do you know what the status of those security systems out there are? Are they live monitored or are they just going to recording and then we go back and pull them up?
I believe they're recording on site. They're using a system to get back to the shop. It's housed at the shop, but my understanding is we're leasing the circuit because we need that connectivity, but it's going to a database or to a hard drive at the airport shop. It's not new enough to be one of the ones that we monitor on our phones.
Thank you.
Account 60, supplies. Account 70, capital purchases. Account 80, capital purchases. Account 99, interfund transfers. Colleen?
I know there's discussion with regard to an airport general manager, and it's not reflected in here yet. So, what's the anticipation on that? Are we waiting for the airport advisory committee to finish their work before applying that request for increase? Or is that something we should have in the budget initially, at least for consideration?
Through the mayor, yeah, so it's undeniable that the airport really does need an airport manager. As we were discussing where to put our attention for a request of another position, all of the new funding coming in kind of superseded the idea of an airport manager. The process I was on with proposing rate increases to help balance the fund budget within the airport being put on hold as we wait for the HDL and Northern Economics rate study kind of delayed the discussion. We don't have the numbers to bring a well thought out proposal at this point, but there are some, there's some tasks that just aren't being we just can't accomplish right now. And one of them is having regular audits of airplanes that are out on the airfield. We unfortunately passively find out when airplanes who aren't being billed are on the airfield because they'll use someone else's tie downs, and that person will say, "There's this airplane in my tie down," and so we have to track them down and figure out who they are. That's something that an airport manager would handle. They'd have a much better understanding of who's on the airfield and figure out who the new person is and see if they checked in like they should, or if, truthfully, there's a kind of a game of musical chairs where someone might be told you're not supposed to be in that spot, and then they disappear and end up in another spot. So that would be cleaned up. We also definitely need to have the constant support for our, especially our leaseholders that are very active out there, and give them the service that they are looking for. And so eventually, when we have some better numbers and a better proposal, we'll be bringing that back. But it was kind of eclipsed by the projects monies that are coming through from Murkowski and other funding sources.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I could come back to the finance director for pretty much the same discussion about reserves. I noticed the airport net positions decreasing by about 5% with this budget. What are our expectations as far as reserves go?
So, to Councilmember Graham through the mayor. So, by policy, we have not established a benchmark reserve like we have with water and sewer for the airport. Fact is, the low operating revenues, the low enough operating expenses, but it can't support is the depreciation on such massive infrastructure. So I think we understand that in its current state, it is being supported by the general fund. You've heard Eric talk about looking at rates so that we're putting our best foot forward and trying to relieve some of that pressure off the general fund. It's just not realistic at our current status to think that it's going to support the depreciation and infrastructure.
And Eric, based on your knowledge of our airport and similar airports, Palmer being very similar, and believe it or not, out in Willow being somewhat similar to what we have here, are our reserves, our ability to respond to significant emergencies, are our reserves adequate for that when compared to other airports of our relative size? I mean, $7 million or $605,000 just is not a whole lot of money. Cracking runway longitudinally is going to be $500,000.
Well, I guess, through the mayor, the question on reserves is, if you're asking if we have protection against infrastructure damage, I would say no. But if you're asking about operationally, I would say yes. So the infrastructure at the airport is incredibly expensive, and so it would require either extreme increases in rate increases or general fund support to fix that immediately. But I think as we leverage, match with either state or federal grants and improve our infrastructure, we'll have some resiliency in that. But we also do need to look towards long-term funding of the airport so that it can stand if it can't stand alone on funding, at least it's a lot closer to being in the black. But airports are very expensive animals, and they have very strict oversight from FAA. So it's always going to be difficult to have a very large budget reserve because of those costs and the pressure on revenues.
Well, I'm thinking back to when Councilperson Sullivan Leonard was on the council previously, prior to her serving in the legislature.
Which time?
When water rates there was like a 5-year plan to increase water rates, and I think we abandoned the last
2010?
year of that. It would have been, about that time. But, there was a recognition, by management that we were, just digging the hole a little bit deeper every year. And then management came forward and said, if we're going to get to, this is where we need to be, all right, all you council brainiacs, figure out how we're going to get there. So I'd like to see over the next year, kind of see that, because I am concerned. 600,000, that's not even half a mile of road, much less when you're talking about trying to repair a runway or a concrete apron. I'm concerned about that. The city does have, adequate funding to be able to support that out of the general fund, but as this is an enterprise fund, maybe we should be thinking what is the cost of the enterprise, and over the next year I'd like to see, some real numbers. I don't mind getting slapped, so some real numbers would be nice, thank you.
Absolutely. I think that the general fund could be used to loan to the airport and make those important upgrades, but eventually the revenue is going to have to pay it back, so that's where it needs to make fiscal sense. So we're definitely going to be working on those numbers. The HDL master plan will help us get there, and then there's always the desire to expand the facility, and so that'll be a very costly endeavor, and it needs to have a return on investment that makes sense, and we need to know how that will be funded, and then how those rates will be, how the revenues will be recollected. Because we could just make it the best airport in the valley, but then never touch the rates, and that doesn't make much fiscal sense in my mind, so I agree.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right. We need a motion to come out of committee of the whole.
Madam Mayor, I move that we exit the committee of the whole.
Is there a second?
Rubio second.
The motion's been made by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to exit the Committee of the Whole. Is there an objection to the motion? Hearing none, we are out of the Committee of the Whole at 6:50. And next is audience comments. Anyone that would like to speak to the council? You've got 3 minutes. Please come, state your first and last name. Seeing no one, we will move on. We are to mayor, clerk, attorney, and council comments. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard. Oh, I'm sorry. I just left you.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 22nd, and that's the first public hearing on the budget ordinance. After, the second one is on May 24th, excuse me. After the public hearing is closed on May 24th and a motion is made to adopt the ordinance, amendments can be moved at that time. If you have any amendments, if you could get them to our office by May 19th, we could work with Joan, the finance director, to make sure all the account numbers and everything are correct. That would be great. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, was there not some discussion about your not being in town on the 24th, or did I? 31st?
I'll be here. That's my birthday. Of course I'm going to be here.
Well, then I'm sure we'll have a cake. I'm just trying to remember what.
I'll tell you what kind I want.
Well, good. Now that my email's working, you can do it.
No, it's, we leave the 30th.
Yeah, thank you.
And hopefully we're going to bring back enough money to do the airport.
And you can buy that cake.
Huh?
I'll buy your birthday cake and you can buy the airport cake.
Well, that'd be great. I'd be glad to do that. I might even make it. Okay, Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Really good discussion on the budget, finishing it up tonight. Happy to move forward with it. I've got a couple amendments I will be bringing forward just so council's aware. One of the biggest pieces is with regard to Arctic Winter Games 2024. Cheryl Mativa has submitted information, I believe, to all council, and Mayor, I believe you have that as well. And they are seeking at least $50,000 for a grant for the Arctic Winter Games, which I think is really appropriate with the thought that, you know, we can showcase Wasilla, showcase the Menard Center at the beginning of the Arctic Winter Games, then also at the end. It's a huge venue that brings in, gosh, thousands and thousands of people. And we'll have to warn McDonald's to make sure they've got plenty of hamburgers and all that usual stuff. It's amazing how they all of a sudden run out of ketchup packets and things like that. It's kind of funny. But anyway, it's a big deal. Again, it'll be such a great opportunity to showcase Wasilla for the great city that it is. So that is a request I will be bringing forward. Otherwise, that's it tonight. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Council.
Councilmember Rubio.
It's good. I'm going to piggyback up on the budget. Great that it's done, and kind of look over it a little bit more. I don't have one on top of my head for an amendment right now. And thankful that Wasilla came out.
Councilmember Velock.
Thank you, Mayor, and yes, thanks for coming. And actually, I have no comments.
Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So regarding our discussion over the past week or so about the budget, when I look at the big picture, I'm concerned because when I look at fund balance, you know, which essentially is the measure of one of the measures of how well the city is managing its finances, I see that, you know, from previous years we have decreased that fund balance, and over the next 5 years we're planning to almost cut that fund balance in half. That's that's concerning to me. To me, that sounds a lot like the state legislature managing the permanent fund or managing the revenues off the permanent fund and the earnings reserve. I will be bringing forward some amendments, nothing that is going to change significantly the $2,150,000 change, negative change in our fund balance. But we need to be looking at some efficiencies here. Our revenues are going up and our fund balance is going down. That doesn't, and our level of service is remaining fairly constant. Some departments it's a little bit higher, some departments it's a little bit lower, but trying to find that optimal space in there where we're providing the best value for the taxpayers, for the money that is paid in, the best value for the citizens of our great city. I don't see this 4-year plan that's talked about on page 26 as meeting that need. Unfortunately, it's not something we're going to fix next week, but hopefully over the next year, before we get to our next budgeting go-around, which will be a 2-year budget cycle at that point, we'll have a little bit better idea on how we can preserve fund balance. And I'm not saying grow fund balance, although growing fund balance would be growing it back to the $36 million level that we used to have would be nice, but having it cut by 50%, almost 50% over 4 years, certainly doesn't show me that we are protecting the fund balance and protecting the city fiscally in the way that it does things. I do think the department heads did a great job this year working with the administration to put the budget together. I would also look at the front of our binder here. On page VI, Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award presented to the City of Wasilla for the biennium beginning July 1st, 2022. And I'm going to go back to this book here. This was bad, Joan. I mean, just to be able to find things, the information is all there, but the ability to find things is not here. And just because the Government Finance Officers Association says, well, nobody else does it that way, doesn't mean that we can't do it the way that has worked for years, in years where we have information on one page and the supporting documentation on the next page. Looking through this thing without the benefit of having a director sitting there to point me in the right direction, it has been I won't say it's been a nightmare, but it has certainly slowed things down, and I know has added to some of my questions because I just can't find the answers anymore. So hopefully next year you'll get another one of these awards, but we'll shift back to a presentation, for the city council that has the information, facing pages, so it's easy to reference and much quicker to get through, and also easier for the department heads. I mean, having the department heads flipping, through 150 different pages to find which one they were looking at was distracting as well. But overall, great budget. I would just like to see it in a different presentation. Kind of get back to what we have had in the past, which has worked for many years. I mean, I can remember coming to these council meetings when Councilperson Sullivan Linder was first a council person, and we were using the same budget presentation that we used last year. And I mean, it's worked for a long time. It's been easy for people to see and easy for people to digest. And don't take this as criticism, but I certainly think it would be a step forward to take a step backward in this one here. So I thank you for your work there, and I thank everybody for looking at it with a keen eye and hopefully we'll look forward to rebuilding our fund balance instead of spending down our fund balance. As far as our presentation today from the high school, thank you for being here. Your timeline doesn't match up with mine, but I'm not here to argue. That's, you know, I am actually very heartened to see that you went in and came up with a timeline, that did some investigation. I mean, that's how government works. That's how administration works, is you get your facts together and you move forward. So thank you for being here, and we'll just agree to disagree at this point. So Jackie, great to see you. Haven't seen you here in quite a while, so a real pleasure to have you here. And thanks everybody for everything, and we will see you on Monday.
To the fund balance, Mr. Graham, last year in previous budgets, they had $5,000 annual maintenance on water and sewer. As you well know, our system is old. So that is what that fund balance is for, is to pay for the upgrades that we need. And to be perfectly honest, I'm surprised EPA has not come in and said, you're done. So kudos to Eric for bringing us along to where we can keep going along. And there was a generator that ran by my house 24/7s for, what, a month? Yeah, 24/7s. Because we did not have the pump to replace it. We had to wait. To me, that's crazy. When you have got infrastructure and you need parts to replace, they should be there. And Eric and Joan have worked diligently to try to get us on the right track. And with the help of Senator Mikowski, she's been a tremendous help in giving us grants and stuff so that we can upgrade all of this infrastructure, because we continue to grow. And if we don't upgrade it, we won't grow. Do you think a business is going to come here and not knowing where they can flush a toilet or not? Mm-mm. You know? So, thank you to the directors. You guys have worked hard. I appreciate your hard work. And I appreciate where we're going as a city, because we do continue to grow. And I'm very proud of that aspect. So, with that, thank you guys for coming. With that, we are adjourned at 7:03.